In this video, I'll be talking about how to read patch notes. Now, why do we need to read patch notes? As I mentioned in the first video in how to climb the ranked, it is not really important to play the meta or actually playing all champions and etc. What is important is that you know your champions really well, 3 to 4 champions. Now, the reason why it's important to understand the patch notes though is to look for the high highs and the low lows. What I mean by that is when a champion is OP, or some people would say a set tier champion, when it's that good, that means that, as I explained in the last video, you have a champion that even in bad matchups or even when you make mistakes, the champion in itself is so strong that the mistakes or maybe the matchup doesn't really matter to some extent. Now, this happens when a champion is truly strong. That's not very often, but it's nice to be able to look through the patch notes to understand and being able to know what different numbers mean and what changes mean. The reason why this is important is then you start learning and understanding the champions, because not all nerfs are effective and not all buffs are effective, and I'll talk a little bit about why and how. I also give examples from some of the nerfs and some of the buffs in the list. The first one we're going to talk about is Aatrox. As a lot of people probably has watched Worlds, they saw that Aatrox was a champion that had over a 90% presence in Worlds. That means he was either banned or picked 90% of the games in the World Championship. Now, why was Aatrox so prominent in meta then? The reason why Aatrox is a strong champion is because of his high healing potential in lane and damage and mobility. He has 3 things that makes him really strong. There's not really too many champions that can stop him because he has good sustain, his damage is really good against most types of champion, and it's easier for him to get through into fights because of his mobility. Now then we can look at what did they actually change about Aatrox or nerf about him. So the first thing to note is, okay, this is his passive, and they reduced the bonus percent maximum health damage. Okay, so they reduced a little bit of damage. That's one of the things that was really strong about him. That's very nice. Another thing is passive increased healing during World Ender. A World Ender is his ultimate, as we see here. So the healing in itself by the E is not changed, but the healing in his ultimate form is lowered. And then the last thing is the World Ender bonus moment speed is also significantly lower. Now, all of these things tackle his strengths. The damage, the healing, and the mobility. All of the things are targeted. Now, then it's all about understanding the numbers. So the first one, it's was 5 to 12%, it's now 4 to 10%. Percentage maximum health damage, which means he's a little bit weaker to tanks, but Aatrox in itself is a champion who's really good against tanks because of his overall damage. Now then you need to convert the percentage and understand, okay, how much percentage damage are we actually losing? But that's a math problem in and in itself. The important thing is understanding, okay, overall, this was a good nerf. How much it will impact him, maybe a percent or 2 lower in win rate. He's still a good champion. I wouldn't say he's bad, but these you can see examples of hitting the right things about the champion and making him more balanced. So I would for sure assume that we're gonna see a lot more Aatrox, but not to the same degree as we saw him in Worlds. Another important change you want to look at is, for example, Lissandra. Lissandra got a buff, and we haven't really seen too much Lissandra lately. Now, why is that? Reason for that is her items are not really too good, and the other problem is that a lot of the mages that are strong in the meta just outrun, stop her engages, or have a lot more damage. So the impact overall from Lissandra is not that great. Now let's see what they actually buffed about her. Now her health growth got up by 6. That's fine. It's important because Lissandra is an engaging mage. She wants to go in, deal a lot of damage. So getting health, it's nice. It's not a big impact, but it's good. Ice Shard. Her slow is increased on all ranks. This is also good. She's a control mage. She wants to engage. She wants to hold control, slow, stun, root, whatever. This is things that she needs. Ring of Frost. Her cooldown is lowered, so she can use it more. So the changes overall are nice, but they're not really impacting the things that make her strong in the game. She needs damage. That's what you want. She's a lockdown champion. So that means that Lissandra in itself is not a super strong champion, but because of her lockdown potential, she's good with certain champions that doesn't have good lockdown. So that again means that Lissandra is still a fine, good champion, but needs other types of help to be able to play it in game. So it doesn't mean that you can't really play her, but she's not a broken champion. She's not an OP champion by any means. Another interesting change is understanding base stats and why for some champions it's really important and for some champions it's not really important. So for Rammus, when you see the base stats increase here, you see base attack damage lowered from 56 to 53, and some people will be like, is 3 base damage? Does it matter? Does it do anything? On some champions, doesn't matter. The reason why this matters on Rammus, for example, is that he's a jungler and he will use consecutively and often basic attacks on the jungle camps. Now some people is like, yeah, but he's just tanky, he doesn't really need to do damage, he's just a beefy boy, you know? That is correct. But the reason why it's important with these kind of changes is that when you're a jungler, you really what is really important about you is your jungle clear speed, because the faster you can clear, the more often you can impact the map. Now 3 base damage attack damage is not that much, but when you are on a high level, all seconds matter, because of you can calculate how many basic attacks he uses on a normal clear and how much damage overall is dropped. You also lose seconds overall. That's why on some champions these are huge changes. On some champions they don't really matter at all. And that's very important things to note about junglers in general. How fast can they clear? Some of their changes impact that overall. One of the last things I want to note is Sion. Now, when you look at a Q buff, it's fine, it's good. What is important to understand about the Sion Q is it's dependent on situations. Now, what do I mean by dependent on situations? Is that the Q is used for either killing minions or you need to hit champions to deal damage. So what I mean by dependent is that this is good for wave clear. The Sion's wave clear has already been really good. So when you look at that overall, is you can use your full combo of abilities to already kill waves at a certain pace. So the damage in it itself doesn't help his clear speed in laning phase, but it helps against champions. But to help against champions, you need to hit them. That means it's dependable, and you need to be able to stack it up. As you see, there is a lot of differences compared to how much you can stack up the Q and actually hit. So it's a good buff overall, but you won't feel the impact as much, as there's not always you will hit the Q, and it's not always you'll be able to get the full extent of it. I hope this helps to understand why patches can be important, to understand numbers and etc. I'll see you guys in the next video.